act on something. In Seattle, it was the initiative. In some cities, it could be a referendum, or it could be, for instance, asking for a change in the state law. But you have to ask a group of people to do something. And what is the thing, what's the goal when you move the ball down the field? It's to make a goal. And what's the goal? It's to change the law. As long as you talk about incidents and things of that sort, we want to change the law because this is a democracy. And so what's the next element? You need players in the game. You move the ball down the road, you make a goal. Who are the players? The most critical players, the people who can actually change the law, are the politicians. How do you get to the politicians? Well, there's certain steps you have to take. The most simplest is to simply go and meet with them. I meet with people all the time, usually the developers who want tax breaks, who basically want a zoning change, who want to put the skyrise somewhere. But it's rare that you really get average citizens calling up and say, I have some of my neighbors together who want to get together and talk to you about something. The power of just meeting with someone is very, very influential. But you can also talk to other people, because politicians in a democracy run on a regular basis for office. That means we go out and we ask for endorsements. We ask for people to vote for us. In the initiative process in Seattle, as was mentioned briefly, there are certain groups that you have to go out to, you get them to, in basically what I say, using that sports analogy, you've got a ball, you're moving down the field, right? You got a goal, you got the players, you need equipment. The equipment are letters of endorsement. We endorse, as a neighborhood group, League of Women Voters, Democratic district organizations, for the most part, they're Republicans as well, but they're probably not getting very far, but each city is divided up into legislative districts. Each legislative district has a Democratic organization, likewise Republican. They meet once a month. They entertain resolutions, find out the rules. Often they may not even have they may have openings. You can join as a precinct person. If not, find someone who is there. Draw up a resolution saying, I support this initiative, or I support this change in the state law. I support this ordinance. Have them do something. Have first a discussion in that organization. You force that discussion around this particular item. Don't also forget other types of organizations that may not immediately come to mind. Every city, everybody has a city council, they have a police chief. Usually the police chief will have what the precincts or subdivision in the city. The city of Seattle has what's called crime councils. Each of the precincts is a crime council. The mayor also has advisory groups. If your city does not have advisory groups to the police chief, ask him to form them. The advisory groups can usually represent different sort of constituencies, minority groups, special interest groups like gay groups. And then go to those groups, go to crime councils, and make the argument that, as was made earlier, why are we arresting people for instance, marijuana use, recreational drug use? What's the purpose? This initiative that we passed in Seattle lowered the priority to the very lowest. When we said we want to do that, the police chief and the mayor said, we're already doing that. You don't have to pass anything. And some council members said, we'll pass a resolution, which is basically sort of our intent. I said, no, we want an ordinance, which is the strongest thing you can do. You want to change the law so that by law, it's the lowest priority. We force a discussion on that. You have to have a clear goal in mind, what you want, put it on paper, go out and organize to these various groups. And then the council itself could have passed an ordinance saying that, but they were afraid. People are afraid to step out of the box. People are afraid of how other people may criticize them. Fear is probably the biggest motivation in our society. You have to overcome that fear of criticism. And so the initiative went forward, and there were some of us that supported it, and lo and behold, in the election, in a primary election, which generally means that most of the Democrats don't show up as much in the primary, more Republicans show up, usually the elderly vote, which are more conservative, in a primary, and the turnout's lower. So in some ways, the cards were stacked against the initiative. Lo and behold, an initiative, and in that primary, the initiative got 58% of the vote, higher than any other candidate for any other office in that election. It passed overwhelmingly. It's a victory, and it's great. We formed this marijuana policy review committee, and by law, we're reviewing the arrests. The city attorney who does support the initiative claims that I didn't really change very much, and thank God for aggressive reporters. They pointed out that he basically was getting his numbers wrong. Even after he was told he had the numbers wrong, he still denied it. Eventually, some of the folks here forced him to recognize that, in fact, yes, the arrests had dramatically gone down. But you still have to keep the pressure on. And we're going to produce a report on this, but in other cities, unfortunately Denver, they passed something similarly, but there they're using the state law. And in Denver, they make between 1,500 and 2,000 arrests a year on marijuana alone. That's what was reported in the paper, at least. In Seattle, it's now, I think, down to 100 or less. And before, it was 400 before the initiative. So it had a dramatic impact. Going back to my initial outline, we wouldn't have had that victory in Seattle if it wasn't for people going out with a message, going out with education, identifying the groups with a very clear thing. This is what we need for you to do, and you need to focus on what you want to do. It might be the state legislature. Work with the state legislators in that instance. In the end, if we all work together, basically following those rules, having a ball, having a goal, having players, having equipment, you can play soccer or you can play politics. And if you play politics, it's not in a frivolous sense. It's in a sense of enjoyment. It's in a sense of self-fulfillment. And it's in a sense of bringing a celebration of life and the use of our democracy to make our lives better. And that's what we're doing here today as a movement. Thank you.
Our final speaker is going to help us understand how we can put a local movement into the context of a larger national picture. Because unless you coordinate what's happening in one place with another, then in many ways you would be just as disjointed as if you're not communicating between your grassroots and your grass tops. He is the senior staff attorney of the ACLU Drug Law Reform Project, and he has a history working on death sentence reform. He's one of the most brilliant minds in marijuana, and he's worked extensively on medical marijuana. Please welcome to the stage Mr. Alan Hopper.
Brilliant minds in marijuana.
Marijuana movement.
Thanks, Tom.
Good cover, Dom.
Thank you very much for your patience. I know it's been a really long session, and that we have cut into your lunchtime, my lunchtime too, so I promise to be brief. And thank you, Dom, for asking me to be on the panel, and Alan and Keith for another wonderful normal conference. I'm sure this is going to be an educational experience for all of us. I'm going to talk to you just for a few minutes about some of the thinking that has been going on in our office and in the ACLU nationally about the challenges of working collaboratively with local grassroots organizations, and also why it's worth all of that challenge. My office, I work for the Drug Law Reform Project. We are a special project of the National ACLU, the National ACLU's legal department, which is obviously a national organization. There are also state ACLU affiliates, and those affiliates also have local chapters. But my office is very definitely a national organization with a national focus, a national agenda, and we don't have really a local community where where we are able to do the work where we live, and I think that there's something very important that is lost because of that. But I want to talk some about the challenges that we face in terms of trying to work collaboratively. I think that it's becoming clear to us